My mother-in-law convinced my wife to convince me to buy their old house so we could live next to them. It's the worst decision I've ever made, and she thinks I don't know about the spare key she has. So, my wife is split 50-50 between having her head deep in her mother's rear and not wanting anything to do with her. It's complicated. My relationship with my mother-in-law was always awkward. She didn't want her precious daughter to leave home and build her own family, so she always tried to shackle my wife as close to her as possible and used every trick up her sleeve to achieve exactly that. From fake illnesses to emotional manipulations to last-second, unnoticed vacations we were forced to go on, my wife, until now, never grasped that what her mother was doing was wrong. Around 6 months ago, my mother-in-law and father-in-law bought a new house, a smaller one, as they didn't need all that space at their old home. At first, I personally wasn't interested in that house, but somehow my mother-in-law convinced my wife to convince me to buy the house from them, so we could buy it cheaply and have one less worry. I was completely against the purchase. It was incredibly close to their new home, like a 30-minute walking distance, and the amount they asked for, that being $450K, was not justified for the state the house was in. Long story short, my wife got extremely upset with me for not wanting the house, and I just gave up and said yes, so yay, we own a house now. For information, we got the keys, documents, and everything is on paper. Nothing is in their name anymore, it's all on us now. For the past few months of us moving in, renovating a bit here and there, all seemed well. They never came to visit, and if anything, we would be the ones to visit them. The house was fine after some work, but there's still a lot to fix. But then I started noticing some strange things regarding the house. Whenever we are gone for more than 8+ hours or a few days and then return to the house, it seems like someone has been inside. I could have sworn some of my stuff was moved. A few times it smelled like gas, as if I left something running in the kitchen, and the sink in one of the bathrooms was wet, even though I always wipe it dry after using it. Even my wife found it odd, and after the gas incident, she was alarmed. So I figured my mother-in-law probably still had a key that we didn't know about and was snooping around. I bought 2 cheap cameras and installed them so I could see the entrance and the living room, as those two are connected. As someone suggested, I also changed out the locks by buying completely new, secure doors and having them changed, as well as installing new window security since all of those were old. 2 days after everything was changed, I got a text from my mother-in-law saying that I'm an evil person trying to destroy everything she loves, and that she wants the house back from us because she isn't tolerating how we are treating her old property. I asked her where this came from all of a sudden, and her answer was, "You're destroying our old home." The door was a precious memento, and we shouldn't have changed it without asking her first. I told her the house was no longer hers and we could do whatever we wanted. I didn't hear back from her until now. She now wants her house back because we're apparently not fit to be homeowners. She is offering us back $430K of the $450K, as they already spent $20K, and wants everything back. I told her to go eat grass and that the home is now ours. I already had the police at my door. Can you imagine what it looked like for me to explain to them that this house was legally mine? They laughed. And the worst? My wife says to just get the old door back. I don't understand my mother-in-law, and I'm okay with that, but I don't get how my wife can be so deep in her BS. If it were up to me, I would go no contact and leave it at that, but my wife is just, well, glued to her. I can't even enjoy marriage anymore. It doesn't feel like her and me, it feels like her, me, and her insane mother. My father-in-law is alright. Just a normal person, most of the time fed up with my mother-in-law's BS too, but he can't be bothered to actually hold her back. I'm stressed, angry, and really disappointed. Advice, please. Up in the comments. Counseling is up next. If that doesn't work, I don't see a long, healthy future either. As heartbreaking as it is for me to type this out, I don't see myself living like this. I don't want to be in confrontation mode all my life just because one person can't let go. I guess, in truth, a part of me has already decided. The entire last year was just strange. I didn't imagine marriage working this way. Since my mother-in-law got her claws back into my wife and moved closer to her, everything changed, and I can feel the shift in behavior. I'm giving myself another year with counseling and a lot of work, but if I don't see actual change or just BS changes from my wife, then I will leave. I'm just glad I got a proper marriage agreement/contract and that I didn't cave on that. I'm not considering children right now. To be completely honest, after last year in general, I don't think a child would be a good idea at all. My wife would just hand it over to her mother. I'm looking up counseling options. The door is in the basement. I could change the locks and reinstall it, but that alone would be too much of a win for her. I will drop the door off at her house, that's a good idea. Update 1. So quite a lot has happened since yesterday. I stopped answering most comments, as I was just taking in everyone's advice, thoughts, and experiences. First, some info again. Some people were concerned that dropping off the door would mean she could copy the keys. Not possible, as both the door and locks were replaced with high security keys. I know a locksmith could still duplicate them, but that would take some time. Some were worried about birth control. Don't worry, I can't even think of bedroom intimacy right now. Regarding security, no, I did not catch my mother-in-law on camera. I installed them in conjunction with the change of the door and locks, and I don't see a point in spending money on more cameras, Ring doorbells, etc. Some asked if my mother-in-law had more children. Nope, single child. I paid the entire $450K. My wife didn't pay for the house, renovations, nothing. She bounces from one job to another, trying to find something fitting. This has always been the case. I don't mind supporting her, but I feel a bit leeched off sometimes. Now to the actual update. I called my father-in-law and asked him if he would meet me for a coffee because I wanted to talk, And bless him, he did exactly that. We sat down, and I asked him to please just listen and not interrupt. I must have talked for close to 2 hours. This man sipped his coffee, listened, sighed, and said the following in short. My mother-in-law's plan was to sell us the house, rebuy it, making us literally homeless, so we couldn't say no to her offer to live with her and her husband. My father-in-law did try to hold my mother-in-law back but failed. He was extremely upset about the police call, upset about only offering $430K back, and upset in general that she's going this far to shackle her daughter. His offer and advice, I should take my mother-in-law's $430K offer. Then we will set up a legally binding contract between my father-in-law and myself. He will give me the $20K plus what I put into renovations, etc., without my mother-in-law knowing, which would bring me close to $500K. He told me to pack it up and just leave after a stern talk with my wife. She won't wake up if it's me versus my mother-in-law as long as one of us is in close proximity. He looked sad and upset. We hugged at the end, and he told me not to be too saddened by all of this. Sometimes we need to make hard decisions, and I would regret it if I didn't do this. There was more talk, obviously, but this is the short and interesting part. Back home, I talked with my wife, in a calm tone and manner. She didn't see any evil from her mother, said her mother needs a lot of attention and love like most elderly ladies, and often she sounds meaner than she actually is, but that she only wants the best for us. Us? No, she only cares what's best for her and her own intentions. We argued a bit back and forth, and my wife is 100% behind her mother. She said I should get some therapy to get out of the obsession I have with demonizing her mother. I stood up, left, and slept at a friend's that night. I offered couples and individual counseling. It was denied. Apparently, I'm the only one that needs special attention, as she called it. And I guess that's exactly what I need, special attention, by myself, for myself. I already messaged my father-in-law. It's not worth it. Thank you everyone. Thank you for taking the time to help out and listen to someone you don't know. I might take this homeless opportunity and money to get out a bit, explore, and breathe freely for once. Up in the comments. Oh, believe me, I told my wife what my mother-in-law was planning. She denied it and said I was so deep in my coup of demonizing her mother that I was the one needing therapy. We have a pretty tight-knit prenup that specifies no assets or property will be split unless children are involved. She gets what is hers and what she owns, which isn't a lot, and I know this sounds harsh, but this house, for example, is now completely mine. I paid for everything, and she didn't contribute a cent. It's all on paper that this is all on me. So as long as no children or pregnancy are involved, everyone keeps what is theirs. Also note, we do not live in the US, so laws, etc., will be different. I'm not abandoning the house, the homeless part was for when everything is over. As of right now, I'm in the house, alone. Trust me, I'm not going to let this go easily. After reading all the comments, I am already skeptical of my father-in-law too. I've got some ideas up my sleeve. I will get my money back, the house is not going to be sold back to them. A good friend of mine, his wife is an attorney, and we're already messaging back and forth. She is hooking me up with people for everything from lawyers to contracts. Believe me, I wasted enough time, resources, and money. I won't do this again. I went from sad to angry to determined. I will get this done properly. Update 2. Hello, it's been 4 months now since I came here to ask for advice, maybe some of you still remember what it was about. Well, a lot has happened. As you know, my father-in-law offered to repay me behind his wife's back. At first, I thought to just take this offer and move on, but after reading what some of you wrote about how it sounded too good to be true and why I should give in, I refused. I don't want this to get too long, so here is what happened in the past 4 months. I kicked my wife out, and she's now back at her mother's. I still own the house and got all the repairs and changes done. Since then, I've been renting it out. I gave her back her old precious memento door. My ex-mother-in-law got handcuffed and had a nice drive around in the back of a police car after she tried to get physical with the new house tenants, claiming it was her house. Just 2 weeks ago, my ex-wife tried to contact me, saying she can't keep living with her mother, but she doesn't have enough income to live on her own. Not my problem. I have been traveling a lot ever since I got everything sorted out. Went to northern and southern Germany, met tons of nice people, and saw some beautiful remote places. All in all, life after kicking out my then wife has been good. I never realized how shackled my thoughts and actions were while being with her after we moved closer to her parents. I now live in a nice 2.5-room apartment near a small city. I enjoy myself and take everything slowly, focusing on work, myself, and just relaxing for once. You wouldn't believe how happy I am that we never had children together. Thank you. My wife cheated on me with several men while we were dating in college, and that's how I found out several could mean more than 10. My wife, 44F, and I, 43M, have been married for 20 years. We started dating in high school when I was a junior and she was a senior, and we were long distance for her first 2 years of college while I was in high school and did 1 year at community college. Then we went to college in the same city for a year and have lived together since. We got married the summer after I graduated from college. Our marriage has been pretty great so far, but I initiated a divorce after I discovered that she was sleeping with multiple other men during the 2 years we were long distance. Just after Christmas, we got together with a few friends of hers from college to catch up, have dinner, and hang out. We talked about a lot of stuff, and my wife mentioned that we met in high school, not that we dated, just that we met. Her old college roommate commented that it was crazy that we met in high school, had a few wild years in college, and then ended up together. I played along and commented that I didn't know if my wife was as crazy as I was. The roommate started to tell a story, but my wife cut her off and said she was uncomfortable about it. I sensed something was up, so I said that we actually started dating in high school and were together for my wife's entire time in college. All of my wife's friends got real quiet, and the rest of the dinner was awkward. On the way out, one of her other roommates took me aside and said I should have an honest conversation about what happened in college. I asked my wife on the way home, and she kind of blew me off. I told her it was important that she was honest with me, and again she said it wasn't important. When we got home, I told her I was going to stay at my brother's house until she was ready to talk about what happened in college. The next day she came over and admitted to sleeping with several men during her first 2 years of college. She said she didn't consider it a big deal at the time because we were long distance and she didn't think a high school romance would last. I pressed for more details, and she said it was at least 10 different men, including at least 3 guys she introduced to me as friends when I came to visit on weekends and 1 guy she was still in contact with. I told her that I wanted a divorce and would be starting the paperwork as soon as I could, which I did on January 2nd. Her family and most of my family are telling me I shouldn't throw away my marriage over a few mistakes. I've stood by my belief that cheating on me with multiple men for years is unacceptable no matter when it happened, and the fact that she continued to maintain relationships with these guys right in front of me was an unacceptable amount of disrespect. We have 2 children, but they are 17 and 19, and I believe they will understand why I need to end the marriage. Am I wrong for leaving? I feel like I'm going crazy with the number of people telling me to overlook years of infidelity and decades of lies. Update 1.1. Holy crap, I'm glad I did this with a throwaway because the response here is unexpected. I obviously can't answer every question or comment, but I wanted to provide some details for common questions. The reason I posted this is that my wife and a few friends have been saying it's common to sleep with other folks when you're in a long-distance relationship and that I'm kind of the odd one out for not sleeping around. I felt like I was being gaslit, but I wanted an outside perspective. We live in a state with a waiting period to finalize a divorce, so I felt it was a reasonable idea to get some insight before things are finalized. After reading these comments, I see a handful of folks saying it's normal to sleep around during a long-distance relationship, but it seems to be a significant minority. We saw each other a couple of weekends a month during the 2-year college period. I lived about 3 hours away from her college, so it was long distance but not like cross-country. This was not a situation where we went months without seeing each other. The 3 guys I met while she was in college were meetups that happened during parties. The subject of me being her boyfriend didn't really come up, so I honestly don't know if these guys knew anything. The 1 guy we're still in contact with married a mutual friend from college. This is not some guy she secretly messages on the side, it's somebody we've talked to regularly for years. I've talked to him a few times since I learned about my wife. He said he didn't know we were dating at the time and has since blocked my wife on social media. Some folks have asked how the roommates didn't realize at our wedding that the timelines didn't work out. The main reason is that my wife and I had a very small ceremony with just close family in Texas, then went back to the East Coast to have a big party with friends. The typical reception and sharing details about how we met didn't really happen, so her roommates didn't realize we started dating before college. It sounds like they thought we only dated for the year we were both in the same city, then moved in together. I was open to therapy or some kind of attempt to save the marriage, but her insistence that this whole thing is common and I'm the one who's out of line is just too much for me. The only time she showed any remorse or even offered to reconcile is when I started filing paperwork. In the last week, she's gone back to saying she's right and I'm overreacting. This is also why I feel like I'm being gaslit. It seems obvious that this is a major issue, but I've got my wife and others telling me it's normal and I'm overreacting. I'm not getting a paternity test unless my kids want to get one. I don't have any doubts that they are biologically mine, and no test will make them not my kids. I love them more than anything in the world, and my wife's infidelity won't change that even if one or both of them is not biologically mine. They've been my kids for 19 years, and they will be my kids until I stop breathing. Update 1.2. Hey all, I've been reading a bunch of the responses, but things are getting crazy and increasingly unhinged, so I probably won't be checking in more. Here are a few more answers to common questions I've seen. We were definitely exclusively dating at the time. First, dating culture was a lot different 20-ish years ago, and being exclusive was kind of the default for most people. Second, we had a long and difficult discussion before she left for college about continuing the relationship long distance. She specifically wanted to stay together and even joked about her dad coming after me if I started sleeping around with girls at my school. Finally, at my senior prom, she was not able to attend and was very upset when I proposed going with a platonic female friend of mine. As a result, I ended up skipping my prom and hanging out with her instead. While we never said the word exclusive, I think the above reasons, combined with the general relationship before she left, are enough to assume exclusivity. Based on some comments here, I followed up with the friend that said I should have an honest conversation. She told me that 10 guys would be on the low end and that her biggest concern was that there was apparently at least one pregnancy scare that I didn't know about. I honestly don't think that really changes much. It's less about the number for me and more about the fact that she seems incapable of recognizing why this was wrong or why I feel betrayed. Thank you all for the helpful responses, even those that disagree with me. I will still be open to therapy if she's willing, but I honestly feel like it would be more about us being successful co-parents and finding closure than saving our marriage. Update 2. I wanted to provide some updates here as my original post got a lot of traction. First, let's talk about the things I learned about the situation in college. After talking to my wife in therapy sessions and texting with two of her roommates, it's clear that her roommates knew something was up in college. They said they thought the situation was weird and likely involved cheating. My wife had told them that we both had some wild times in college and worked it out before we got married, so they never really brought it up. The roommate who pulled me aside recently was uncomfortable with the fact that my wife clearly didn't talk it through with me and wanted me to know. As far as being introduced to guys she slept with, apparently that was not intended. One of the guys ended up dating and then marrying one of our mutual friends from college. This is the guy she was in contact with. In the other situations, she initially blamed me in the counseling session, but has now agreed it was bad. When I went to visit her, she planned to hang out in the room or just hang out together alone, but I wanted to go to a few parties because in high school and community college, I didn't really have parties to go to. She didn't expect me to meet the guys, but they were at the parties and she felt she didn't really have a choice. I still think this is kind of crappy, but it's not as bad as her intentionally parading me in front of the guys. Most of our discussion in therapy has been talking about why I think it's a big deal and she doesn't. She initially said that none of these guys were in relationships with her and it was mostly one-night stands or friends with benefits. Since she didn't view them as romantic relationships, she didn't see the big deal, her words, not mine. My opinion is that we never said that was okay, and she actively prevented me from doing the same. After digging into this across 2 sessions and my wife talking to some friends, she now agrees that it was a breach of our trust and relationship. This shared understanding has helped us talk about this situation more honestly and helped us get from arguing to talking, which is why I'm optimistic about co-parenting. Now, here's why I'm 100% set on divorce. 2 things came up that make me want to leave the marriage. First, about 10 years ago we went through a really rough patch and had an inactive bedroom for about 2 years. She had expressed that our bedroom life was becoming boring, so I tried to spice things up a bit. Apparently, she had been hung up on some bedroom experiences that happened in college, that she is not comfortable talking about, and wanted me to try them, but when I did, it made her feel awkward and guilty that it made her think of other men while she was with me. The fact that she's saying these experiences were meaningless, but they're still impacting our marriage tells me they meant more than she wants to say. Second, she admitted that she has been flirting with coworkers on business trips since the pandemic ended. She says she has never slept with anybody, but it got as far as going on a date with one of her male coworkers. That was the absolute deal breaker for me. We have told our children that we're getting a divorce. We told them it was due to some bad decisions that we made in college that we're having trouble moving past. My 19-year-old, who is in college, asked me if I cheated on my wife while she was away at college. My wife got a little shaken up, but admitted to the kids that she's the one who cheated. We have agreed to not share any additional details with the kids. I reinforced that both of us will be there for the kids and that we are in therapy to help make sure we handle this in the best way for the family. I also told the kids that if they wanted to talk to either of us or a therapist about it, I would fully support it. We've started talking to a mediator about how to proceed with the divorce, and unless things change, we should be able to have an amicable divorce. We're both financially stable on our own, we have no major debts, and our kids are older, so custody isn't a major issue. This has been a crappy couple of months for me, but I'm doing okay now and I honestly am grateful that my last post blew up because it both validated some of my feelings and motivated me to go to counseling with my wife. Update 3. My wife and I have completed our divorce, and everything is official. We had an uncontested, amicable divorce with minimal disagreements. Our lawyers worked together to create the plan through mediation, and a judge signed off on it a few weeks ago. In the end, the actual divorce process was pretty straightforward. The only complication was that our 17-year-old was adamant about my having custody because their relationship with my ex-wife has really fallen apart as a result of this. Initially, my wife dug in her heels and was ready to give up on the uncontested divorce, but my son pretty much told her she could choose between letting him have a break for a few months to process and rebuild, or force him to live with her until he turns 18 and risk never seeing him again. I felt this was a bit harsh, but my wife backed down, and we moved forward with my having primary physical custody until my son's birthday later this year. For my part, I have encouraged my son to be open to fixing things, as the actions my ex took before he was born didn't change the 17 years she cared for and loved him. Fortunately, as the divorce moved forward, he has been spending more time with my ex, and I'm optimistic they will work through this. In the end, we pretty much split our retirement and investments 50-50. For our house, my wife really liked the house and I didn't, so she kept the house and most of the furnishings and took out a mortgage to pay me back half of the equity and half of the estimated replacement value of the furniture. Pretty much all of our other stuff was either easy to split, my car and her car, my music gear and her hobbies, clothing, personal effects, etc., or we just agreed to sell it and split the resulting profit. Things were a bit easier for us because we had already documented most of our valuable items and electronics for an insurance rider we added to our home insurance a few years ago. Things have been going well for me personally. Both of the kids spend most of their time at my place, and we are still very close, which was my biggest fear in the divorce. I have a new house that I really love, and I gave in to the midlife crisis urge and traded in my outdated minivan for a Lexus LC 550. I even had a woman at work, not a close coworker, invite me out on a coffee date. While I was upfront with her that I'm not ready to date just yet, she said she would be happy to take a rain check and would be happy to go out with me when I'm ready. I'm honestly thrilled because she's really smart, has a great sense of humor, and our positions at work are far enough apart that we don't really work directly with each other at all. My ex and I are continuing to go through couples counseling together. We have transitioned into having closure on our marriage and making sure we maintain our relationship enough to be effective co-parents. While these sessions have been great to help me process things and keep things as healthy and positive as possible given the circumstances, it has also reinforced that divorce was the right option. It's clear from some answers in the sessions that my wife immediately started dating once the divorce process started, so whatever love was there was clearly on the way out already. I'm pretty sure the coworker she was just friends with dropped her off at our recent session. The fact that it doesn't even really make me mad is a good sign that I was also probably done with the marriage. In the end, it will take a long time for me to heal from the betrayal, but I feel like I'm making good progress and I can honestly say that the divorce was unquestionably the right decision. I've probably cried more in the last 4 months than I have in the last 20 years, but for the last month or so, I feel genuinely good about myself for the first time in a long time. I'm enjoying having my own life, been busy getting my 17-year-old ready for college in the fall, and looking forward to a coffee date with a smart, funny woman in a month or two.
My husband is mad I won't give my stepdaughter money for college like I did with my stepson and bio daughter, probably because they didn't call me a BTCH. I, 43F, have one daughter, 18F. Her father left us when I was pregnant with her. I own a small interior design company, which is very successful in my country, and I make a very good living from it. I met my husband, 55M, about 8 years ago. He moved in with me 7 years ago, and we got married 2 years ago in a private ceremony. My husband has 2 children from a previous marriage, a boy, 20M, and a girl, 19F. Both my stepchildren hated me and my daughter at the beginning of the relationship. When my husband asked them how they'd feel about him moving in with me, they initially hated the idea and told him that if he did, they would stay permanently with their mother. After a while, my husband moved in anyway and told them they were welcome if they changed their minds. They did, after seeing the big house with the pool and all the great accommodations. The boys started liking us gradually, and we're on great terms now. The daughter, not so much. She was horrible to me and my daughter. One day, when she was about 13 to 14, I heard her making fun of my daughter's weight and looks to her face. I was livid. I have suffered from an ED growing up because of bullying, so I absolutely knew how dangerous that was. I knew how my daughter must have felt, so I told my husband that my stepdaughter was never allowed to live in my house again. My stepdaughter tried to apologize, and she was sobbing, but I didn't budge. I had too much experience with bullies to know it just gets worse when they're confronted and have to apologize, and I wasn't going to take the risk. So she moved permanently with her mother. My initial plan was to break up, actually, but this was my husband's idea. She still bullied my daughter in school. They didn't go to the same high school, but my stepdaughter had friends in my daughter's class who did her bidding. I found out about all of this about a year ago. My daughter was embarrassed to tell us and thought she could manage her bullies. It broke my heart, and I felt so guilty that my baby didn't dare to confide in me. Uni is free in my country. Students often take student loans with almost zero interest and work part-time jobs while studying to make ends meet, but the education is free. When my stepson started uni, however, I gave him $100K so he didn't have to work and could concentrate on his studies, engineering. He was so grateful but told us that he wasn't sure he could be trusted with such a large sum, so my husband is handling his money, making monthly payments. I am planning to do the same for my daughter. My stepdaughter graduated with great marks and started medical school this year. She asked her father about her $100K, and he came to ask me. I was confused because before I gifted my stepson, I asked my husband if I could do it, and I wasn't planning on doing the same thing for my stepdaughter. He told me I could do what I wanted, and it wasn't weird at all because my stepson and I had a great relationship, and he always saw me as a second mom. He got really mad and told me that my stepdaughter had changed a lot, but it wasn't true at all. Although she wasn't living with us anymore, she made sure to make our lives a living hell every time she visited, and even got physical with me and my daughter. If she started playing nice now, it was only because there was money involved, and I knew that and my husband knew that too. I even told him that she called me that BTCH and even saved my number in her phone under the BTCH. He is now very angry. He hasn't talked to me in over a week. He's saying I'm using my money to control their lives and that he's heartbroken. If I don't have enough money for both daughters, I can split my daughter's share between them since my daughter isn't even sure she wants to start college right away, and let's face it, she will likely never get into med school, his words. Maybe if I did it, my stepdaughter would be more grateful and closer to my daughter. I don't know what to do. I feel like I don't owe my stepdaughter anything. My daughter and I have suffered enough because of her behavior. She could still do like the rest of her peers, work and take loans, and she has a bright future ahead of her. There may be some truth in his words about me using my money as a reward/punishment. I am ashamed but still defiant. I should do what I want with my money. Additional info. About getting physical, she pushed my daughter so hard that my daughter stumbled and fell over the Christmas tree 2 years ago. She said she didn't mean it, my daughter was in her way, and she didn't see her. She didn't know that I was watching the whole time. She even laughed when my daughter fell. She wasn't allowed in our house on holidays afterward. As for me, she literally slapped me in the face when she was 14. Commenter. You know this man is just with you for your money, right? You may want to reconsider that whole breaking up plan you had. Just think about it logically. If your children told you they would never see you again if you moved in with a man, what would you do? I'll take a wild guess and say you would end it, right? Well, he didn't. So, we've already established he's a bad dad who doesn't actually care about his children's best interests. Next, his kids didn't want to move in with you until they realized you were rich. Kids often learn these morals from their parents, so what does it tell you that both kids were suddenly okay with things, and the stepdaughter threw a fit about leaving the home of a woman she hated simply because you have nice things? Maybe that they were raised by someone who has a particular interest in the finer things in life. Continuing from point 1, when it came to picking his child or picking your money, again he picked you with the money and permanently kicked his kid out. What the hell? Finally, now that you've said you won't give her any money, he's trying to pretend he's a good father? But we've already established twice that he doesn't actually care about his kid's best interests. And given he's the one in charge of his son's money, it stands to reason he'd probably expect the same. Even if he didn't, again, he's only willing to be a good dad when that involves taking your money. If it involves giving up your money, though, oh no, his kids can go rot for all he cares. And I guess one last point, he wanted you to give up providing for your actual child to provide for his and even decided to insult your kid. So, that brings me back to my first point. If you were in a situation where you had to choose between a man and your kid, who would you choose? Because you seem like you choose your kid, even before you realize he's just in it for the money. Remember, with truly manipulative people, you never see it coming. Update 1. Hi, I have now talked to both my husband and my stepdaughter, so I thought I should share it with you if you're interested. But before that, I want to say that I'm very disgusted, although not surprised, by the amount of people who actually took a bully's side. What I wrote in my first post wasn't just one-off incidents. Anyone with more than 3 brain cells should have understood I wasn't going to write 8 years' worth of bullying and bad behavior in one post to convince bully apologists to understand why I did what I did. Many also talked about how we, as parents, have failed the bully. I don't know how, since the 2 other children we raised turned out to be decent human beings with a lot of empathy for others around them. I only wish everyone who defends bullies or tries to explain away their horrible, life-scarring behavior to never have had to deal with one in their or their children's lives and feel the pain they can inflict on others. I do not regret any of my actions. I saw my stepdaughter for what she was, and I acted instinctively. Her young age played little to no role in my decision to protect my baby. My daughter was and still is my sole priority. As for the update, I decided that I should try to confront my stepdaughter directly instead of communicating through my husband or via text, so I asked her over for tea. She accepted immediately, which was a first. She showed up last Sunday. I sat her and my husband down, and I just bluntly asked her why she should expect any financial help from me when she hated my guts. She got defensive and said that she didn't ask me, she asked her dad. I told her that I knew she wasn't stupid and she well knew that stepson got his gift from me and not their father. She said, "What's the difference? You're married." I told her the difference is that her brother treated me and my daughter as family while she always hated us, bullied her little stepsister even in high school, and I asked her if she would give money to someone she knew hated her half of the amount she hated me and why then she expected me to do that. She was shocked here as she didn't know I had found out about the high school bullying. She started crying and apologizing, but I told her I wasn't the one she should be apologizing to. I told her that I wished her great success and happiness but that I won't be helping her financially throughout her education. My husband was silent the whole time. When she left, I told him to never compare our daughters again, making my daughter to be the inferior one just because she wasn't as academically successful as her stepsister. I trust my daughter, and I want her to be happy, and if she wants to study in a less prestigious school, so be it. Her happiness is the most important thing to me, and I didn't appreciate him dragging her and comparing her to others when none of what happened has anything to do with her. He tried to apologize and told me he just wanted to help his daughter. I told him he's free to do that however he wanted, just not at my daughter's expense. We have been civil to each other ever since, although he's a bit cold towards me, but hopefully, he's just ashamed of this whole episode. I will give him some space because honestly, I need some myself to think things over. Thank you for listening.
My wife friend-zoned me in our marriage and wants a platonic companionship and I don't know what to do. My wife, 35F, and I, 35M, have been married for 15 years and together for 20. We have 2 kids, aged 12 and 14, whom we absolutely adore, and we work tirelessly to provide the best possible life for them. For the past 3 years, things have been somewhat bumpy. I understand that our kids are at an age where they require a lot of our attention and resources with school, band, club sports, and other extracurriculars, and I'm aware of the physical and emotional toll this can have on marriages. However, for these past 3 years, my wife and I have had very little intimacy and very little action in the bedroom, and we've been trying very hard to work on that aspect of our relationship. This past year has been the most difficult and by far the darkest year in our marriage. We didn't talk very much and essentially became roommates, co-parenting our kids under the same roof. It was very depressing and very demoralizing. It got to the point where we began contemplating divorce, and it became very dark and gloomy in the household because of that. We began seeking help with both individual therapy and couples therapy, and it seems to have helped somewhat. Little by little, we started to get along and have deeper conversations about what our marriage looks like and what we would love for it to look like. This is where it gets tough. As time passed, my wife started to tell me she was no longer in love with me and that she only saw me as a best friend. She said she only loved me in a very platonic way, and this was one of the main reasons she didn't have any desire for intimacy, let alone wanting to smash with me. This was very shocking to me and, quite frankly, I was devastated. I became angry and depressed, and I couldn't fathom the thought that I was no longer wanted or desired by the person I was completely in love with. Things began to deteriorate again, and not long after, we were back to square one. I sat down with her one afternoon and had a heart-to-heart conversation, asking questions about where the root of this problem lies. Her answer was, "I don't know, and that I have built up resentment towards you, but I don't know where it stems from." As you can imagine, this provides very little to no insight into how to approach this. I'm puzzled, frustrated, and do not know what to do at this point. Currently, we've arrived at a place where she says that she has no bedroom drive and no desire for intimacy or connection. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could possibly do or what it is about me that is so unattractive or undesirable, and her response is always, "I don't know." She stated that she does love me, but it's not the same. She has been feeling disconnected for years and says that our marriage just takes too much work. Her focus is only on the children for now, and that my co-parenting contributions are meaningful to her in our home. I'm at a loss and am mainly venting about my frustration. It's tough to realize that the person you love has no feelings for you. I feel like, at this point, I'm only here to contribute financially and as a parent. I feel like what she means by companionship is that she's comfortable with the convenience of having a good father for our kids and my financial contribution to the household. Regarding intimacy and smashing, she basically told me that it's not something she's interested in or wants at this time. She mentioned that the only way to get to a point for any of that is to be intoxicated, which I believe is incredibly awful and very wrong. I told her I do not think forcing herself to smash or be intimate by drinking or anything else is good, and I declined to be a part of that. To my surprise, it upset her and made her more distant. We're both extremely honest and transparent. We've never cheated on each other, and we are always free to look through each other's phones, emails, socials, etc., though we hardly ever do. I asked her if there was someone else, and she declined. Honestly, I believe her. We then peacefully went through each other's things, and as expected, everything was clean. We've always been very straightforward, even with the hard topics, so I don't sense any foul play or infidelity. I do not know how to help our situation, and I'm starting to become a bit anxious and desperate. We're both fairly young, healthy individuals and good-looking. We both have good careers and are good parents. I'm just not sure how our lives could have driven us to this point. I'd love some outside perspective on this matter and some insight on how to address something like this. It feels so awful to be unwanted and undesired by my own spouse. I hate it. Up in the comments. We did some swinging in the past, which was fun for a while. We mutually decided to stop, and we have established that it's not the issue. When we were swinging, however, our marriage seemed to be in a good place. This is something we disclosed with our couples therapist to ensure we weren't neglecting a potential issue. I asked my wife if her experiences during swinging were affecting her view of our relationship, and she said they weren't. Our swinging experience was always together and very under the sheets fun-driven, nothing really emotional or poly. The truth is, I have to believe her at her word. I have no reason to distrust her. To date, she's always been very straightforward and never afraid of dealing with things head-on, no matter how painful. Update 1. I wanted to give you an update on how the therapy session with my wife went this week. I'm not sure if this is helpful, but I took many of the responses, comments, and suggestions from my initial post and put together some points I wanted to discuss with our couples therapist to help us navigate some of the core issues affecting our situation. One of the main things that has come up is the term resentment. It has been really eating me up inside knowing my wife keeps telling me she doesn't know why she's resentful or why this is affecting her emotionally and mentally. I brought this up with our therapist once again and resurfaced the conversation about being married for so long and being together since we were 14 years old. Our long history of growing up together and having children when she was 19 years old, me 20, significantly changed the trajectory of our lives. We experienced severe poverty and many hardships in the process, and we essentially had zero social life for the past 10 years because we were so busy raising kids. The therapist followed up with tons of questions, directed mostly at my wife, about her feelings towards this, and 90% of her responses were very our kids focused. It definitely felt like she was afraid of saying, yes, it sucked, because she would feel guilt or shame, as it might imply she regrets the kids. I mentioned this in the session, and the therapist encouraged her to look at this outside the lens of being a mother and to try to view it a bit more selfishly and individually. This was very eye-opening. My wife mentioned that she was very frustrated with the fact that we missed out on many things in life. She also was very clear in saying, I do not think I missed out on other partners or dating or partying, but I certainly lost all my friends. This was huge because one of the big pieces that has caused a strain in our lives is how siloed and isolated we've been, again, busy raising kids. I followed up by reminding her that it's important to have good friends and to make time for herself and her friendships. For the past 3+ years, we've had multiple conversations about friends and how it is important to have them in life, especially when you have similar peers who can help in many areas of life that perhaps we have no experience navigating, and even simply for enjoyment. It has always been something my wife avoids, even though she's always been someone who needs that external stimuli. The main reason for her not investing in friends or even herself has always been the kids. Like I mentioned earlier in this post, 90% of the answers have to relate to the kids to some degree. At this point in our session, I started to feel like there was a common denominator, aka the kids, in most of the frustrations and problems she was experiencing. So I simply asked her, "Do you think you may be upset at me because I'm responsible for these kids in the sense that I got you pregnant so young?" I wasn't ready, but she said that she was upset at me for that. She also followed up with the fact that she knows that's unreasonable because it takes two to tango. I did feel like it was progress because it kind of gave us something to work on and help alleviate some of these burdens, so we agreed to invest more time in nurturing good friendships, both together and individually. Towards the end of the session, we began to discuss what actionable items we would take from this session. At this point, it was still all very ambiguous and blurry as to what the outcomes were. I was very direct and very forward in asking my wife what her plan is moving forward. Note, I had decided prior to the session that if my wife said the same thing about being a co-parent or roommate, then I would take the 180 approach and essentially focus on myself. She started basically saying the same thing, that she doesn't have any desire to be intimate with me as of now and that she loves me immensely and she feels bad for not being there for me, as mentioned in my first post. I also brought up the brief swinging that happened, to which, for the 50th time, she said it wasn't a problem. I agree with her on this. This was something that was a mechanical approach for a solution to a problem that was very much non-existent when we tried this. We both really have no issue with this. We know it happened, we tried it, and mutually stopped and turned the page. I also brought up other life events that may cause resentment, and really, we ended up not getting anywhere else as far as the root for resentment, which was discouraging. I then basically expressed to my wife that I will not be okay with that arrangement. I told her that I've really done everything I can, and that this issue has reached a point where it has nothing to do with me or requires me to do anything that I'm currently not doing. I was very direct in saying that I will not accept this dynamic and that I need to be with someone who is actively involved in our marriage, works towards resolutions, and is very much interested in maintaining an active intimate relationship with smashing. I expressed how I am not going to be a convenience and that there is more to life than being roommates and co-parents. I made sure she knows I love her dearly and that I do want this to work for the better. I also told her that I'm fully committed to this marriage as long as she is as well, and that if she wasn't, it's okay. However, I will not be a part of something where these efforts are not reciprocated. I told her I have no plans of leaving, and I do not want a divorce. However, I made it clear that if this dynamic continues, divorce will be the only outcome. Of course, tears were involved, and it was a very bleak and sad ending to the session. Still, nothing was said, and I walked out feeling very discouraged and very determined to start working on the 180 as soon as we left the room. It's painful and very difficult because much of the 180 requires you to be very short, cold, and transactional. The saddest part is realizing that this dynamic is already very cold and transactional. Here is where it gets very interesting. I started working on implementing many of the 180 recommendations that same day. I mentioned to my wife that, hey, things are going to be a bit different moving forward. I'm going to honor our roommate/co-parent dynamic without reproach, and it should be no mistake that I am not happy here and I am never going to be okay with it, but I am done working on it if she wasn't going to work on it. She agreed and went to bed. I started to build distance and basically focused on myself, very short and transactional. She asked for help with some of her personal things, to which I declined, and it really shocked her. She was upset, saying I was being petulant. I explained to her that she is now fully in charge of her own life and her own issues. We didn't talk all day, and we only spoke when necessary. A few days I kept this going, and she was very visibly upset and stressed. I typically react to that with gestures of help or nurturing, but I didn't this time. That night, she was crying, telling me she's stressed and she thinks something is wrong with me because I'm indifferent. I simply listened, then I told her that this is the dynamic she proposed and that I'm simply, much like her, taking care of myself and focusing on myself. I'm not going to lie, it has been very hard to be cold and distant because, as I mentioned before, I love her and I wish I could hold her and cherish her. However, I know this is somewhat manipulative in a way just to get her way and still keep me in the friend zone, so I've been staying the course. We're now going on a week of this 180, and let's just say there have been many changes on her side. I think she is starting to realize there is more to me than just friends and co-parenting. I sent her a text a few days ago essentially itemizing bills and separating the financial responsibilities 50-50, and she lost her crap. She basically told me it was out of left field, to which I responded, "Hey, friends go in 50-50 and as your friend, I expect nothing less." This was very eye-opening because it gave me a glimpse of how I'm really taken for granted and how her level of comfort and convenience at my expense is really overlooked. I pushed through anyway and basically told her that this is the new dynamic she asked for and that it's still a bargain because she would have to be 100% if she was on her own. I'll wrap up with this. While the 180 has been working in many different areas, I am still very much sad about the overall situation. There have been many eye-opening statements being said and realizations that have not been pleasant to encounter. It has also sparked new energy and new efforts on her side as well. She's definitely seeking to talk to me more often, And while it's hard to turn down, I hope if things improve, this continues to happen. I've also noticed that she's making more time for herself aside from being a mom, which is huge because she pretty much neglected herself for years. I'm very pleased seeing her be more herself. My hope is that as we work on ourselves, the marriage improves. There really is no telling at this point where this will go. We are very much cordial and amicable even to this day, and that's a very good sign. Boundaries are set, and expectations are very clear, and I feel that no matter the outcome, I will be at peace with everything that has been done. We're still going to continue the couples therapist until we either rekindle our marriage or end up in divorce. I feel like having this unbiased third party really helps as a witness and as a guide through this. No matter what, I will always love my wife. However, I will not participate in a smashless, intimacy-less marriage because we both deserve better. Thank you all for all the kind words and recommendations and feedback. This will be my last post on this topic, and I wish you all the best.
My stepmother treated me like one of her own and became the mother I never had. Now she's in hospice and my bio mom is suddenly shacking up with my father and trying to steal the inheritance. My 17F stepmother, Jane, is a wonderful woman. She and my father got married when I was 4, and she's been a rock in my life ever since. My mother was always my primary caregiver, but up until that point, her relationship with my father was bitter and angry, and I basically never saw him. Jane was the reason they developed a stable co-parenting relationship. She encouraged everyone to have a good relationship with each other and was always there to support me and my mom when things got rough. Jane has always been a hard worker. When she met my dad, he was living out of a hotel, and my mother was doing everything in her power to keep me away from him because she was petty and angry that their relationship didn't work out. Meanwhile, Jane had a great job, a nice house, helped my dad get back on his feet, negotiated a visitation schedule with my mom, who hated her for a long time by the way, and made sure my dad sent us money every week because neither one of them could afford an attorney to negotiate child support payments. Jane had no reason to do any of these things, but as I got older, she made it clear that she loved me as much as she loved my half-brothers who were born a few years later. I even have my own room in her house because at the time, we lived with my grandparents and various boyfriends of my mom, and Jane felt that I needed a more stable environment than that. She's like the opposite of the evil stepmom. When I was 15, Jane won a big lawsuit against an airline company and was awarded upwards of $1 million. She used the money to build sizable trust funds for me and my brothers so that we would be taken care of later in life. Despite having a lot more money, she still wanted to live a fairly modest life, so she paid off the house she has and has been living there ever since with my dad. Sure, she bought a new car and they went on a few nice vacations, but she didn't blow all her money on stupid things, which I respected. About a year ago, things started getting really weird. Whenever I saw Jane, she seemed to look sicker and sicker, but no one would tell me or my brothers why, even though I know they knew. All we knew is that she was at the hospital a lot. Around the same time, my mom has been coming around my dad a lot more and acting really strange, basically like she was trying to romance him. Whenever Jane was in the hospital, my mother would insist on spending the night at their house and playing mom to my brothers, which was so weird to me because she never liked them or Jane. She'd be the perfect little housewife, and my mom is not like that at all. It was super fake. Worst of all, my dad started falling for it. I'm not stupid, I'm pretty sure they were sleeping together. I tried to shield my brothers from it, but they're not dumb either. I tried talking to my dad too, but he insisted it wasn't like that. Then, a few weeks ago, my mom started talking about all the places she'd like to visit, how she wanted a new car, was looking to invest, etc., which is weird because my mom has been a bartender her whole life and has lived paycheck to paycheck since before I was born. She was acting like she was about to get a lot of money, which started to make me really suspicious. Between Jane being sick and my mom acting all nouveau riche, I had a lot of questions. Finally, I decided to visit Jane in the hospital and ask her about my trust fund. I found out that if anything happened to her, my dad would inherit all the money, including full control of the trusts for me and my brothers. She asked me why I was so interested in the trust fund, so I told her what's going on with my parents and how my mom has been acting with my dad. I didn't want to, but after everything she did for me, she deserved the truth. It really hurt me to break her heart like that, especially once I found out that she was basically in hospice at this point because of irreversible kidney failure. She's only got a few more months. We both cried so much. Then, 2 days ago, everything came to a head. My mom stormed in, furious, and started arguing with my dad. Apparently, Jane met with her lawyer and changed the trust so that my dad would get nothing, and all of the trusts would be controlled by my step-aunt. She demanded to know how Jane found out about their relationship, and I came out and told them that I told Jane everything. I told them that if they wanted to play stupid games, they would win stupid prizes, and that I wasn't going to let them screw Jane over after all the help she gave my family when she didn't have to. My mom slapped me, and my dad just looked so defeated. Then my mom told my dad that she didn't really love him, that she was just pretending to so he would marry her and she could get all of the money. The worst part about it is that my brothers witnessed the whole thing, and now on top of their mom slowly passing, they have to deal with a cheating dad and his vindictive ex. Our whole family is in ruins, and I feel like it's my fault even though I know it's not. Yesterday, I visited Jane again and told her about the fallout. She apologized and said that she had to dissolve my trust fund to make sure my mother didn't get hold of the money, but as her oldest, I will inherit the house/property after she is gone, and that's worth more than the other 2 trust funds combined. My father won't get anything because she's going to divorce him before she passes, and honestly, I'm happy for her. She made me promise to take care of my brothers and told me that once I turn 18 this summer, I can kick my dad out of the house if I want to. And I fully plan to do that, by the way. I haven't talked to my dad since, and I can't even look at my mom. I can't believe they would conspire to do this to Jane after all this time. Just proof that they deserve each other, and I'm embarrassed that they're my parents. Once I turn 18, I'm going to cut my dad out as much as I can and cut my mom out completely. I hope she rots. Meanwhile, I'm going to try to be at the hospital as much as I can until Jane passes away. Anyways, I just needed to vent. I'm really messed up about the whole thing, and I feel super betrayed, although I can't even begin to imagine how Jane feels. I'm gonna be so fed up when she's not here anymore. I can't even think about that right now. But at least she's not surrounded by people who just want to bring her down. Up in the comments. I don't remember the exact details, but Jane has a genetic condition where she gets cysts on her kidney. She already had a transplant a few years ago, but now she has developed problems with her arteries or something in her legs, so she doesn't qualify for dialysis. She could get another transplant, but she doesn't want to because the last time was so traumatic. So she decided to just let herself go onto maintenance medications to prolong her passing until she gets her affairs in order. She has a few other health problems that make the typical treatments really dangerous, and according to her, she'd rather go surrounded by loved ones than on an operating table. Update 1. Hi everyone, it's me again. Many of you asked me for an update on my situation with Jane and my family, so I've come back with a few things that have happened since I initially posted. I will try to organize this in a way that addresses the major points from last time. Jane is still alive and doing surprisingly well considering the circumstances. She's always been a fighter, and although her disease has been progressing, she's keeping a positive attitude with everything that is going on. She says she's grateful that she was able to see everyone's true colors before she passed, so she could go into the next life knowing the truth. We have become unbelievably close in the past few months, and it's getting harder and harder to know that she's getting close to the end. She doesn't ever talk about it though, and I know it's because she doesn't want to hurt me, but we both know the situation, so we're just making the best of our time. I'm also not being completely transparent about all of the drama at home, but to be honest, I don't think she needs to hear all of that. We did end up having that surprise celebration of life that I planned. A lot more people showed up than I thought, but they all got an Airbnb near the hospital where Jane is, and we were able to take her out and spend some time at the lake near the facility. It was super low-key, which I know Jane preferred, and I was even able to get her old college friend to come after I found him on LinkedIn, lol. We had food, there was music, and we played games. Overall, it was a really great time, except Jane started crying at the end, but she promised me it was just because she was grateful. My brothers are also doing okay. My aunt, Jane's sister, is currently paying for them to go to therapy, and they've become a lot more open about talking about the situation. They just turned 13, but a lot of the time it feels like I'm talking to actual adults. They become really independent lately in a good way, and aside from me driving them places, I don't really have to do much for them anymore. Their grades aren't super great, but they're not failing, and considering the circumstances, it could be a lot worse. They still hang out with friends, and I'm keeping an eye out for depression symptoms and stuff. The situation with my mom is as funny as it is embarrassing, to be honest. She spent a few weeks ignoring us, and then she tried to crawl back into my life, basically begging me to let her move in because her lease is about to expire, and she has nowhere to go. That convo went about as well as you'd think, and she ended up calling me an ungrateful brat and that I couldn't just ignore her because she's my mom. I told her to get out of the house before I called the cops and to go back to my dad, who at that point was only coming home every few days to check on us and grab some clothes. After that, she tried coming by a few times, and when I wouldn't open the door, she would lose her mind and start yelling through the neighborhood. After 3 instances of this, I finally called the cops, but because I'm 17, they told me there's a possibility that I would have to go home with her since technically I'm a minor and need to be with a custodial parent. I told them no way because I was the only one watching my brothers at the moment. That led to a whole thing where after a few hours, my dad basically showed up, and I was allowed to stay there because there was finally an adult present, and I'd basically lived there for over a year. After that, the cops firmly told my mom that if she keeps showing up and causing drama, they would arrest her for trespassing since technically it was Jane's house and not hers. She left and hasn't tried coming to the house anymore, but for a while, she would call me constantly telling me I owed her and all kinds of stuff. She's now blocked on everything, and anything she needs to say to me gets filtered through my dad. As for my dad, Well, since he's basically required to be here for another 2 months until I turn 18, we've basically just avoided each other. It's not too bad though because I've been heavily relying on guilting him for everything to get my way. For example, he was going to contest the divorce, but I threatened to kick him out when I turn 18 if he does that, so he just signed all the paperwork and is basically doing whatever Jane tells him to do. I don't openly disrespect him or anything, but I've made it clear that I have no intentions of doing anything he says ever again, and he doesn't fight me on it. Most of the time, he's just in his room, and sometimes he'll go back to my mom's, but only for a day or two before they argue and she kicks him out again. I haven't decided whether or not I'll kick him out yet, and we haven't talked about it either, so I'm kind of playing it by ear. As for me, I'm handling everything as well as I can. I found a new job where I make a little more money, so I've been focusing on saving as much as I can and just being there for my brothers. Between working, school, and visiting Jane, I've been so busy I haven't really had time to really stop and think about everything, but I know it'll come. One of my friends has really stepped up and helped me manage everything, and I'm super grateful to him for being there for me and my brothers, so we'll see how that goes. Anyways, I wish I had something more exciting to share, but that's what's happened since my last post. Thanks again for all the support on my last post. I didn't let my stepdad walk me down the aisle even though he was there for me after my real dad abandoned me 20 years ago. Now he might be the second father to walk out of my life. I, 29F, ruined the memory of the best day of my life because I was too blind to see that what I was doing was hurting one of the most important people in my life. I got married 2 months ago to the love of my life, and he finally opened my eyes to what I had done. He showed me a perspective I hadn't understood. When I was 5, my father left us, just disappeared without a trace. He and my mom were already separated by that point, but he was still living with us. 3 years later, my mom started dating Rob, 50M. He was quite a bit younger than she was. I believe she was 34 and he was 26 when they met. Today, he is very wealthy. He wasn't when he met my mom, and he treats my mother like a queen. Whenever she is around him, she looks like the happiest person in the world. My younger sister looks a lot like me and my mom, but her personality is definitely a reflection of her dad's, always telling jokes and being just a nice person all around, while my mom and I are more serious and cold. As I got older, Rob became more present in my life. He got married to my mom, and she got pregnant. But it was still pretty weird seeing him as a father figure, mostly because people would assume he was my brother all the time. When I was in high school, I was dating this boy, and he broke up with me at my friend's house. My mom was on a night shift, and I had to ask Rob to pick me up. When he did, he comforted me, took me to get ice cream, and when we got home, he told me something like this without even knowing what happened: "Whoever made you sad doesn't understand that you are the best girl in the world, and it's their loss. Don't beat yourself up because other people are too stupid to see it." I just said to him, "I wish you were my dad." He smiled and said that he wished that too, and he could be if I wanted him to. We left it at that. I never called him dad, but from that point forward, I saw him as a father, and I think he knows it. I finally reconnected with my biological father about a year ago. It happened because I got engaged. When I came to my mom's house one day, he was there, and I couldn't even recognize him. He was way thinner than he was when I was a kid. He struggled for years with depression and substance abuse. My mom and Rob actually helped him get clean, and they even paid for his stay at a great rehabilitation center. They decided together that it was time for me to finally meet him again. I don't want to explore much on how this was, but all I have to say is that I'm glad to have him back in my life, and I'm glad to be able to help him heal. He suffered a lot, he got lost, but now he is at least trying. Rob and my mother paid for everything at my wedding, and everything was amazing. The church was beautiful, my husband looked amazing. The one mistake I made, I chose my biological father over Rob. I chose the man who abandoned me for over 20 years over the one who took me as his own and gave me everything he could when he didn't have to. I chose the man who broke my mother's heart over the one who saved her. I don't know why I did what I did. Looking back on it, I feel so stupid. My dad didn't deserve to walk me down the aisle. My dad didn't deserve to be in all the pictures with my mom and my husband's parents. It should have been Rob. I don't know, I think I was compensating for the lost time with my dad. Everything was still so fresh with him. I was helping him out. He talked to me every day, and I felt like he deserved to be back in my life. When we were deciding who would give speeches, we had to cut some because it was just too many, and my husband and I didn't really like the idea of hearing speeches for an hour and a half, so we decided on 5 people each. When I gave the list to my husband, he even asked, "No, Rob?" And I said, "Yeah, my mom is already doing one." The others I chose were 2 of my bridesmaids, my mom, my sister, as she really pushed for it, and again, my dad. My husband said I should reconsider. He even thought of giving up one of his to put Rob in. I said it was fine, he didn't need to do that. My whole thinking when doing this was that Rob has my sister, he will have his moment, and this was the only chance my dad had. But I went too far. I completely cut him out of the party, basically. If you look at the photos, it doesn't even look like he was there. My mom looks like she is faking a smile in half the pictures. I don't have a single picture with him, and he only appears in group pictures and some with my husband. I only realized all of this when I texted Rob 2 days ago, asking him about a gift I'm giving my husband for his birthday, and he answered. Then I asked about my car that is with a mechanic friend of his, and he answered. Then I asked him something about my insurance, and he did not answer. A little over an hour later, my mom called me. She just said, "Do you have no shame? Do you not understand what you did?" I just listened, and she told me not to talk to Rob for now. I was just so confused. I got home and told my husband, and he just said that he knows what she is referencing but he will talk to her first. Later, he showed me the wedding photos. He went step by step on everything I have listed here. He talked calmly and broke it down for me, and by the end, I was crying so much that I had a headache. What an inconsiderate idiot I am. He told me that he and my mom didn't tell me anything before the party because Rob asked them not to. He understood that it was important for me for my father to be a big part of this day, and when they protested, he said that they should not make me worry about these small things. I don't know what changed from before the party to now. My mom only tells me that he needs a bit of time and that he will talk to me soon. My husband keeps telling me that I made a mistake, but Rob will be understanding and will forgive me. And I know that he will. He has already forgiven me 100%. He probably felt something when I was texting him that day that broke him down. I don't know what I said to trigger him at that moment, but also it doesn't really matter. I did the real damage at the party, probably, since he appeared to be fine with everything else before it, not that it was not fine by any means. I have to make it up to him. I don't know how, but I just do. I guess I'm just writing this here because I'm a little lost. I'm too ashamed to talk about it with anyone else I know apart from my mom and husband. She doesn't tell me anything, and my husband keeps insisting that everything will be fine and for me not to worry too much about it. And he is probably right, but I feel like not worrying about this is just being inconsiderate to Rob again. I have to worry. I just don't know what to do. Update 1. First, I want to address some things before posting. No, I am not Linda, and my biological father isn't in the hospital. My sister is mostly just sad, not really mad at me. She said she understood my situation, but it still hurt to see her father taken for granted and sad. My mother is the person most upset with me at the moment. She is the only one who still does not talk to me. I mean, she does, but not really. For the people saying my husband and mother were idiots for not talking to me before, they agree and have told me this, my husband, especially. I'm not trying to shift blame here, just saying this for the people who talked about it. I was not going to post anything else on here, as I'm not a fan of being called names and people saying that Rob should leave our family. Although I'm well aware that I deserve most of everything that was said about me. The comments saying the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in regards to me and my biological father were the ones that hurt the most, as it is a fear of mine and the reason I don't drink much and don't use any substances or anything that could be addictive. But seeing how there are other things that could make us more similar than I realized is really frightening. The day I posted here, my mom told me Rob wanted to speak to me and to go to their home after work. I went and waited for Rob to arrive. When he did, my mom left us alone, and he started off by saying that he was hurt by what I did at the wedding, that he knows he is not my father and that he would never try to force that on me, but he at least thought he had some sort of importance in my life, and seeing me just not give him any importance apart from talking to him when I need help with something made him realize that I do not view him the way he thought I did. At this point, I was already crying so much that I couldn't even talk. I waited for him to finish, and when he did, I just told him basically what you all saw in the post. That I messed up bad, that I was inconsiderate, that he is one of the most important people in my life, and that what I did was unforgivable. The only reason I am posting it here is because of something during the conversation. He said something about my time at college, and I went, but that was because of ... and stopped. He asked me, what, because of what? I just said, nothing, you are right, that was my fault, and I should have done better. He was pretty angry at that point, and he started to smile, and we talked about me taking responsibility for my actions. It's something I'm terrible at, it was an issue at my old job, and since then, I have been trying to be better at it but not very successfully. He asked what changed, and I told him about the post. Multiple people in the comments said that I don't take responsibility, and yes, they read right through me. I showed it to him, and reading the post calmed him down. And no, he did not read the comments, just the ones I showed to him. I would not let him see what some of you were saying about my mom. So yes, he told me if I was going to say something else to thank you people for calling me out for not taking responsibility. We talked about a lot of other things not related to the wedding. At the end, I just told him that there were 2 things I wanted to say for him to take away from this conversation. I really did mean it when I was in high school and said that I wished he was my dad. Even now, with my biological dad in my life, I still feel that way. And the second thing is that I know that it will be hard for him to believe it right now because of what happened, but I will try to prove it to him for as long as it takes. For those interested, I've been going to a therapist with my biological father once every 2 weeks since he came back, but I think I need one for myself, so I will try to make it happen soon. I want to thank 3 particular commenters that helped me. The person who told me to take it slow with Rob and DM'd me to stop looking at the thread because I was spiraling. The one that said, "People mess up, sometimes badly. But in a loving and caring family, it's never the end of things as long as you are willing to own your mistakes." And most importantly, the best comment that was fair and gave me the right advice: "You are a spoiled, selfish, childish person. I don't know if Rob will forgive you, but you can't simply wait to see if he does. Write him a letter in which you fully own up to your awful behavior. Do not say I wish someone had stopped me, that isn't taking accountability for the way you treat people. With him and your mom paying for your wedding and your in-laws paying for your house, you need to grow up and reflect very seriously on how you interact with everyone around you." I guess the post served as the letter in the scenario. Thank you. That was the slap in the face I needed to realize that I need to do a lot of work to improve myself and that the wedding was not its own thing, it was a reflection of who I am right now, and I don't like what I see when I look in the mirror. Also, Rob more or less told me something similar, just not as aggressive, so this comment made me take his words as not him attacking me, but trying to help me understand my flaws. I'm not sure how I will make up for this. Rob is telling me that over time, just me being how I was before my biological father showed up will be enough for him. I don't doubt him, but it's not enough for me. I will live with what I did for the rest of my life. I will always remember. The way I am now, I actually need people to call me out for these kinds of things, and it's not fair to them. I will work on it, I have to. I will try my hardest to not ever hurt anyone I love this way again. Thankfully, now I have someone in my husband to help me do that and call me out if needed. Thank you everyone for all your input.